Hello, Blazers. Welcome to episode 152 of UAB Green and Told, original debut Monday, June 16th, 2025. Through this podcast, we're able to share stories from members of the UAB community. Take a listen back to past episodes of UAB's most downloaded podcast at alumni.uab.edu/greenandtold on Spotify or the Apple Podcast app. And while you're there, leave a written review so more alums can discover us. I'm Greg Berry, a UAB alum and Director of Communications in the Office of Alumni Affairs. Today, we welcome Greg Canfield, Alabama's former Secretary of Commerce. Greg's career path has been anything but conventional. From his early ambitions of adventuring beyond Alabama, Greg will share how he found himself irresistibly drawn back to the heart of the state.
I always thought I was going to be in New York or somewhere like that whenever I was getting ready to graduate. But I didn't think I'd come back to Alabama. And as soon as I got out of Alabama, I was ready to get back.
Plus, we'll delve into how his path to public office was ignited by a spark of frustration and the realization that change may demand stepping up.
Being mad about something and realizing that nobody else was going to do anything if you didn't step up too.
And we'll discuss his many recognitions, including an award from Japan that places him alongside iconic figures.
I mean, hey, look, I'm in the same category as Star Trek's George Takei, Mr. Sulu, and, the Willie Mays.
Greg Canfield chose to attend UAB out of love, wanting to be closer to a girl. A proud product of Alabama, he blossomed in Birmingham's West End before embarking east to attend Huffman High School. He was highly engaged at Huffman. After all, that's where he sharpened his skills in argument and persuasion as a member of the school's debate team.
I was introduced to something called debate. And I was introduced to that by one of my favorite teachers in 8th grade. And a really good friend of mine and I debated together in 8th grade, and we did pretty good. Yeah. And won the city championships that were held that year. And so for 4 years in high school, at Huffman High School, I was a debater.
What was it about debate that was a draw?
It was everything. It was learning new things, research. It was standing up and stating an argument, trying to be organized in your thoughts and arguments. And in the high school 4 years that followed that, it was the best experience that prepared me in so many ways for the rest of my life.
Could you ever have imagined that doing debate in high school would kind of lay the foundation of what you've done?
No. I mean, it was, it was not something that I woke up every day thinking I want to be involved in anything political. When I got to college, I went to the University of Alabama for a few years and met my wife-to-be and transferred and finished my degree at UAB. So I dabbled a little bit in college in politics, but I didn't get my degree in finance thinking I'm going to be a politician. It took me getting into business for myself in the insurance and financial services industry locally in Vestavia Hills, and working with other leaders through the Chamber of Commerce and Leadership Vestavia. I was in the first class of Leadership Vestavia when they formed it, and kind of working with a group of people who we were all uncomfortable with the things that were taking place from the leadership that were elected in our city at the time. So a bunch of us got together and decided we would change that. So I made a decision to run for local office as a city councilor. And that's kind of how I launched into this. It was just being mad about something and realizing that nobody else was going to do anything if you didn't step up too.
You mentioned that you started at UA first in Tuscaloosa. Yep. What led you to Birmingham? Why the transition?
Well, like I said, I'm from Birmingham.
Yeah.
But I mean, look, I'd be lying if I said anything other than I was following the woman that I loved, because she was ahead of me and graduated before I did, and went and launched her career in banking in Birmingham.
Okay.
I wanted to be closer to her, and Tuscaloosa wasn't quite close enough. And UAB was a great alternative for me. And it was interesting because at UAB in the business school at that time, the business school wasn't that big, but it was very personal. I learned a lot in that atmosphere because it was more direct and more personal with, I think, more of the instructors, more of the professors that were there then had real life experience coming from the business world. And that translated, interestingly, from the textbook into real life experience and made it real for me.
You were on campus in the early 80s getting that degree in finance. Why did you go the finance route?
I wasn't accountant material because it just didn't suit my interests. I could have gone marketing, but truthfully, at that time in that era, you needed a business degree that was a little more focused on the money aspects of how to run a business. And so finance was just a good fit for me.
Was there a plan once you got that degree of where you wanted to go, what you wanted to do? Obviously, you stayed for the most part in Birmingham.
Yeah, my plan was get a job. I really didn't have I really didn't have a master plan. I wanted to go to work for Merrill Lynch originally, but at that time, you needed to be 25 years old and you needed to have some business experience. So they really didn't want to talk to me yet. And so by the time I got to be 25, I was already well entrenched with a company called Purolator Courier Corporation, which at that time was a Fortune 500 company, and I was doing pretty well. I mean, I was a rising star with them. I left Birmingham. I'd worked my way up from an entry-level sales position up to account executive, won the biggest account for the company in the U.S. at that time, which was Bell South Services from the old AT&T breakup, right?
Yeah.
And then I went to South Carolina and then to Tennessee and, ultimately made my way back to Birmingham. I always thought I was going to be in New York or somewhere like that whenever I was getting ready to graduate. But I didn't think I'd come back to Alabama. And as soon as I got out of Alabama, I was ready to get back.
So what brought you back? The first time it was a girl. You chased a girl back to Birmingham, at least.
Yeah.
What brought you back the second time?
Well, I mean, I think it was just my wife, Denise, and I both are Alabama natives. She was born in Mobile, spent a lot of her life in Monroeville. After our marriage, and as we just were thinking about where we wanted to be, raising a family, we decided we wanted to get back to Alabama. So Birmingham became top of the list, and I managed to find a way for the company to relocate me.
So at what point did leadership Vestavia come into play and led you down the path of public service in terms of being an elected official?
Well, I mean, obviously, when you are in a leadership program, you're focused on what's taking place in that community. And you're also surrounding yourself with other people of like mind who are committed to and interested in learning how to make a difference in the community that they are choosing to live. So in my case, it was just, a few of us got mad about how things were, and we decided we would be part of the change to fix it. So 6 years on the city council, then an opening came up when then Representative Jim Carnes decided that he would go to the county to serve on the county commission. And I decided, with the assistance and encouragement of others, to run for the state house. And so I did, and I won, and I served in the state house before I became Secretary of Commerce.
And Secretary of Commerce, you spent a dozen years under two different governors working there.
Yeah.
What was that like? Because the way I imagine it, there's great power in that position.
Well, I don't know about power. I had a tremendous amount of professional gratification and fun in that role. That's the one role I've told Governor Ivey this, that I had the best role in governor, even better than being governor, because, I got to meet CEOs and C-suite executives and board members from companies all over the world.
Yeah.
I got to travel to over 30 countries across the globe. And, I had the opportunity to work with and build a wonderful team that many of which are still there at Commerce today. And, when you build a good team, you can do great things. And so we did what I think were some great things together. In the role as Secretary of Commerce, it's very rewarding because you're attracting investment into the state. You're meeting companies and executives from these companies. You're also developing government relationships and political relationships in foreign countries to the betterment of your state. And so I was able to go as head of state and represent Alabama in a lot of situations where it was very rewarding. It was, for a state, it's kind of equivalent to being Secretary of State at the federal level in a small sense.
But during your 12-year tenure, you grew things to be 76 billion in new investments and created almost 200,000 new jobs.
Yeah.
A lot goes into that. You mentioned visiting 30 countries. You mentioned all of, the interactions you had with C-suite executives. What did you imagine when you actually got that?
Hey, look, I never imagined I'd be in this job. Okay. So, I knew a little bit about the role because back then, when I first was asked by then Governor Robert Bentley to be what was then called director of the Alabama Development Office, I wasn't sure, I was flattered that I was being asked by the governor to do this. And I had served in the House with then Representative Robert Bentley, and we were colleagues. We weren't close. We were professional colleagues. So his reaching out to me was a little bit of a surprise. And I wasn't sure because I was in a leadership position as the chairman of the House Committee on Commerce and Small Business. And I was rising in leadership in the House. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to take this new role. And so I turned to one of my mentors, Senator Jabbo Wagner. We both had places on Smith Lake. And anytime I wanted to see Jabbo, I went to Jabbo's place to see him. But this time when I called him and told him what was up, he came to my place. And I said, Jabbo, this is what's been offered. They want me to be the director of Alabama Development Office. I don't know whether I should do it. And he said, it's a no-brainer. You got to do it. So I did. One of the first things I did after traveling around, my first trip was to Japan.
Yep.
Spent 11 days to immerse myself in Japan because we had so much activity with Japanese companies and the relationships matter so much in Japan. The decision was made that I would travel around the country and learn their history, learn their culture, and visit with companies while doing that. And as I was traveling, not only Japan and came back from Europe to a couple of countries we'd visited, I had noticed as I was handing my card and I was telling people I was the director of the Alabama Development Office, they get kind of funny looking because they didn't know what an Alabama Development Office was. They thought I might be in commercial development. So I'm a big marketing branding guy, as it turns out. And I made the decision that we needed to change our name to Commerce because that was something that internationally people understand. Hey, I'm from the Alabama Department of Commerce. Well, most people know what a Department of Commerce is. And then, of course, we also realized we weren't that well known as a state. and we were letting everybody else tell our story as a state. So I decided I would hire a branding company. So we hired Big Communications out of Birmingham. John Montgomery and his team went to work for us, and we ended up branding Alabama as Made in Alabama. That gave us the platform and the brand identity to be able to tell a story about Alabama in a way that we'd never been able to tell it before.
Besides the Made in Alabama campaign, what do you think is the biggest thing, the biggest economic impact that you had with your transactions, with your relationships to bring jobs to the state?
I think being there for 12 years, the consistency of being in that role that long, having the opportunity to develop a team that became well known across the globe. In economic development, relationships matter. And so I think my biggest contribution was building a trusting relationship globally that established Alabama as a place where, companies and boards of directors make decisions on investing with a lot of concern about their risk in doing so. And we, I think, did a good job of being able to establish relationships and proof points through companies that came here. Airbus came here for the first time. Mercedes came here for the first time. Millier came here for the first time. Companies like that and others chose Alabama, and they put their capital at risk, and they found that they could be successful in Alabama. And many of them were so successful that we continued to see expansion, reinvestment, and new jobs being created because companies liked the ability to come here and be successful. And I think just the stability in those relationships was my biggest contribution.
Is there one thing you regret, one thing you didn't accomplish that you wanted to?
Yeah, probably so. I mean, I would have liked to, there's a few countries where I would have liked to have made more inroads into. Yeah. But, there's some countries I would have liked to visit. I didn't get to go to Russia. I didn't get to go to mainland China. I went to Hong Kong. But no, I mean, I don't have a whole lot of regrets about that. No, I really don't.
Which was your favorite country visiting and forming that relationship with?
Well, I went to Japan more than any other country, so I must have really felt a strong interest in Japan, and I think that interest continues today. But I also spent a lot of time in Germany, and France, and the UK.
Through it all, you've gotten a lot of different recognitions. I'm going to read off the list. Alabama Automotive Manufacturers Association Hall of Fame, Southern Automotive Manufacturers Alliance Hall of Fame, Alabama-Germany Partnership, Rainer Bauer Award. And then the most recent one, which ties back into Japan, is Japan's Order of the Rising Sun, Gold Rays with Rosette. What do these awards mean to you? And I see you smile as we're talking, and just meeting you during this conversation, you're probably going to shy away and be humble, but talk about what these mean to you and the impact they've had.
Well, I mean, each and every one of those awards or recognition means, something intimately special to me. Mm-hmm. The automotive industry is a huge part of the success story of Alabama, but it's also a big part of the success story of the Southeast, which has become an automotive juggernaut. And so to be recognized by the Southern states and their auto manufacturers meant a lot. The Alabama-Germany Partnership and the Japan-American Society of Alabama both are organizations that are really focused on developing cross-cultural, educational, and business opportunities. And to be recognized by the Alabama-Germany Partnership was very important. The Order of the Rising Sun, though, deeply means a lot to me because it is the third highest honor that the government of Japan conveys on anyone. And really the first two are reserved for royalty and politicians. And so to have conferred the Order of the Rising Sun is pretty special. So, I mean, hey, look, I'm in the same category as Star Trek's George Takei, Mr. Sulu, and, the Willie Mays, an Alabama baseball player. And, hey, that's pretty good company. But it meant a lot to me just because the opportunities between Japan and the U.S. are boundless opportunities, and they're all based on deep relationships. And so I hope to carry on those relationships, for the remainder of my career and life.
As somebody who's basically been in Alabama your entire life, I know you moved out of state just for a short period of time. How have you seen the economy in Alabama grow over that time?
Our goal at Commerce when I was there was to really try to diversify Alabama's economy. I mean, we talk a lot about automotive, but look at what we did with aerospace, with Airbus and Blue Origin. We had companies like Aerojet Rocketdyne that set up their defense headquarters, moving it from California to come to Alabama. I don't know. And then we had companies like Meta and Google and J.M. Smucker. First Solar, Novellus, Kimber, all those companies represent new areas and new industrial segments that our economy is moving into. And then we kind of got things started with our strategic planning process to take advantage of what's happening at UAB and to really capitalize on the research and the spin out of commercializable research that could take place. And so we were very supportive of the Innovation Depot and EDPA and Southern Research and, even Hudson Alpha up in Huntsville, which has some alignment with UAB.
How did your time at UAB, even though it was brief, set you up for the things you were able to accomplish during your career?
Well, I think what I learned at UAB and the experience I had at UAB was because I was focused on the latter years of my finance major, there was more of my academic activity focused on an application of the academics into real world scenarios. So I did a lot of project work through the finance department and learned a lot about how to evaluate businesses and how to run them.
That's Greg Canfield. During his time at UAB, Greg pursued a double major in finance and accounting at the Collat School of Business, graduating in 1983. Today, he serves as Managing Director of Economic Development at Burr and Forman. Greg's career in economic development reflects the innovative and entrepreneurial spirit fostered at UAB, embodying what it means to be a blazer.
Being a blazer, it means that you have the ability to persevere, right? Because, UAB's history is one of growing from a university that was a side campus to UA. UAB now stands on its own. UAB and being a blazer is about being part of what I think is a university family and a university that has proven that it can stand on its own. It is independently minded and it is forward focused, looking to the future.
Be sure to check out past episodes of the UAB Green and Told podcast. Listen in at alumni.uab.edu/greenandtold. Have a story to share or know someone who does? Email greenandtold@uab.edu. Finally, be sure to follow us on social media. Just search UAB Alumni on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thanks for listening, and until next time, go Blazers.